Welcome, everyone. It's nice to meet you all. I've been involved with technology and cybersecurity related activity or industry for the past 20, 22, maybe 23 years. I start to lose count over time. At the time, I don't think it was called cybersecurity. I think it called website protection, but things have grown tremendously over the years. And one of the emerging concerns that is developed with the availability of AI and machine learning are deep fakes. So we're going to talk about some of the dangers of deep fakes. And again, if you have any questions or comments, or you want to provide some feedback, constructive feedback, please share it into the chat if you cannot join the audio or the video component of the meeting. And as Jonathan mentioned, if you'd like to discuss additionally, we could do as a group, or we could set up a breakout room for individuals to discuss certain topics. So let's talk a little bit about deepfake statistics. According to this survey, it's 2022, about 30% of individuals, people in the world are related, are aware of what deep fakes are, right? And supposedly 57 or some odd percent could spot a deep fake. But sort of deep fakes, they're getting more complicated, and they are getting much more detailed. So it's definitely becoming a hot topic. Excuse me, just moving around my PowerPoint. Okay, so let's talk about some examples. This is a clip that's available on YouTube. We're trying to share information that's readily available in case you want to check it out yourself. But here,
I am not Morgan Freeman. What you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
okay, so that's a little clip on Morgan Freeman and whether that image and the audio, not only the video, but the audio, are real. Are they really Morgan Freeman? And that's an AI generated representation of Morgan Freeman. To the regular eye, untrained eye, you'll probably not be able to detect that was not Morgan Freeman, or that was not a video of the that person. Another example we have here is sort of some technology that companies are performing to improve their capabilities or combat issues around deep fakes or identify deep fakes are watches, right? This example talks about a company that went ahead and developed their own deep fake detection tool called Watch Intel AI, Watch Intel Artificial Intelligence. And the goal is to use computers to identify fake watches. And I'm not a watch connoisseur. Is anyone here on the webinar a watch connoisseur? You can respond in the chat or raise your hand, either one. I think counterfeit watches can be a very risky maneuver, and you could lose a tremendous amount of money, right? So if you go in my area, if you went to New York City and you went to Chinatown and you bought a fake Swiss watch, you might know that you're buying that, but you don't want to be able to go into a store or an online auction and buy a fake watch. So this company developed their own technology to identify fakes. Right, let's talk a little bit more about deep fakes. What is it? It's been used by the cyber criminals primarily, right, to perform attacks, against companies, against technologies, against industries, for all kinds of things, right? In some cases, it's for ransom. In other cases, fraudulent transactions like a fake watch, or to have someone, perpetrate as the CEO and tell the finance department to wire millions of dollars to another bank account, right? And in other cases, national security incidents. And just as a definition, you can read here on the screen. I'm not going to say it word for word, but the idea is deep fakes are to make something look real. It's basically technology to generate fake images from scratch, right? And audio to create a virtual clone, right? And virtual clones could act, speak, and perform activities much like another individual. But the goal is, right, to get something in the end. If you're a cyber criminal, most of the time you're looking for money, but in other cases, you might be able to gain access to a system to steal company secrets or things of that nature, which in the end probably is money related, or in some cases you might be able to destroy something. And how does it work? So deepfake technology is built on top of what's called a GAN, or generative adversarial network. And what a generative adversarial network is a combination of two networks, right? And uses technology or things called face swapping or face replacement technology to create an AI system and develop an encoder. I think there's a question here in the chat. What is the source of this definition? Maybe someone from our team could take that offline and look that up, because I don't have the link right in front of me. Okay, what is deepfake used for, right? And I gave a couple examples before, but in many cases is for phishing or other scams, could perform reputational smearing, could be related to social engineering, disinformation attacks, could be used to perform identity theft, and could be, as mentioned before, related to situations of financial fraud. Any questions about this so far? Okay, so then there's this other company, sort of component called cheap fakes. And you'll see here on the right is a picture, right? And the picture actually indicates on the right, you'll see the cheap fake indicates this person doesn't typically have facial expressions, much like the image on the left, right? So it's what they call the cheap fake, or not very advanced technology to become something like a deep fake, which might be harder to detect. Right.
Hey,
And
David, if I could break in for a second, which quote or statistic is the person looking for a definition of? The source?
For the deep fake definition.
The definition of deep fake. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. And as we mentioned before, the goal, just get right back into it. The goal of deep fakes is for criminal deception, right? Where transferring money, I gave that example. Impersonating the CEO, I gave that example already as well. right? So for companies or for individuals, if you are tricked by a deep fake, or even tricked by a cheap fake, if you fall victim to that, is what could happen is loss of money, loss of trade secrets, loss of other things within the company that could, could damage or harm that institution. Another case is defamation, right? If someone acts, or the deep fake acts on behalf of an individual, it's possible that someone's reputation could be damaged, right? Whether that's performing, in this case, unlawful activities, or by type of language or speech, or whatever the computer is designed to communicate could be damaging in nature to an individual, and that is an example of defamation. Could be also, another example is disinformation, right? Where the wrong information is communicated. In this case, it gave a couple examples of a CEO, but in the case of Russia and Ukraine, if a deep fake is used to, communicate some information on behalf of a nation, that could be damaging, extremely damaging to the political opinion of an individual or a country. So how do we go about, we learned a little bit here about deep fakes, cheap fakes as well. How do we go about detecting it? Well, there's lower level detection methods, right, to identify pixels or pixelation that could sort of pick up, a computer could also pick up deep fakes. But if we take a step back and go to what a GAN is, or a GAN, or a generative adversarial network, what the example there is the combination of two AI networks to learn and train. The GAN actually repeats itself over and over and over to make that cheap fake much more of a deep fake, and a much more believable deep fake. The computer itself can produce this process pretty cheaply, right, without some human interaction, and then develop a very lifelike representation of an individual who could perform these disinformation acts, right, or defamation acts, which could be damaging in nature to organizations. On the other side, since a computer is able to make itself, make the deep fake much more believable, it could also possibly detect if a variation in the video is lower level detection or high level detection, right? So what you're looking for is those abnormalities, such as unnatural movements. In the case of the video that we saw from Morgan Freeman, it's looking for unnatural movements, meaning if you saw me on the video, I might be moving side to side, up and down. There's natural movements, when a deep fake might not have similar natural movements in its process. A deep fake for Morgan Freeman might have been the same movements for multiple videos. So how can you spot a deep fake attack? Well, why is that important? Well, in the case of CyberWarrior, we are training individuals, right, to be cybersecurity professionals. And training individuals to be cybersecurity professionals are giving you the tools and help you to protect companies and individuals, and maybe work for a client, right, to spot deep fakes, so you could prevent these types of attacks from having an effect on an organization or an individual, whether that be a large company, Fortune 500 company, or the CEO specifically of that company, or the financial department of such company. And it could range from a very large company to a small company to government institutions. The effect of deepfake and its impacts could be widespread on any organization. And we went over some of these topics already, but I'll repeat them here. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to share in the chat. But unnatural facial expressions, we give an example of that. Unnatural body movements or body shape, a lack of emotion. So if in the Morgan Freeman example, there was this tremendous lack of emotion. There's another comment there in the chat, Jonathan, about the presentation. I don't know how you want to share it later. I think we would share it as part of a video, right? I think that's probably the way we would do that to answer your question, but maybe Jonathan can answer separately in the chat.
Yeah.
You also might have an awkward facial feature positioning. So what stood out for me about the Morgan Freeman example was his eyes. His eyes looked very awkward to me and had very limited natural movement. Coloring, consistent noise or audio, reverse image searches, hair doesn't look very real. Verify, these are all components you can use to help spot a deepfake, right? So why is that important from a cybersecurity perspective? Cybersecurity is built on trust. And if you're trusting that that video was Morgan Freeman without looking into it, right, without verifying the media before it's shared, you might be sharing an image yourself that might be doctored or AI generated, right? So what you could do is learn about these things on your own, or as part of the boot camp, you can learn about all the tools and skills you would need to develop as a cybersecurity professional. Has anyone had an experience with a deepfake video or deepfake image? If you see here in these examples, right, in these images, which one is the original and which one is the deepfake? Can anyone tell me which? I mean, clearly they're different, right? But on the right, can anyone tell us who that is on the right? Because it's not the same person on the left.
Well, that's Tom Cruise.
Correct, right? Mission Impossible, right?
Yeah.
Is it clear who answered that? Brandon?
Yeah, this is Brandon White.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So you can clearly see if you look closely that the images that, like, if the facial expressions are different, right?
Yes, sir.
And maybe the hair part is close, but a little bit different, right? The shirt and the positioning are exactly the same, but there's characteristics even in the nose and the mouth area that are slightly different, right? Why do you think, Brandon, you can answer this, or someone else, why do you think the Tom Cruise image was captured as a deep fake for this individual? Anyone have any idea?
Maybe just for attention, probably, or just trying to draw maybe social media attention or something like that. Maybe.
Could be possible, or it could be that there's a tremendous number of Tom Cruise images available on the internet that computers can access, download, and use to match with such an individual, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's just one example, but you gave another example. Does anyone have another reason beyond what Brandon or I referred to as a reason why the Tom Cruise image may have been captured and presented as a deep fake?
I would say the usefulness of the Tom Cruise image couldn't be overstated. He's got huge notoriety, and depending on what they plan to do with this fake, it's probably good for clickbait and that kind of stuff.
Okay, makes sense.
I would also say that maybe Tom Cruise is being used as raising money for a charity, and that he's trying to get people to send money to X destination for a pull at your heartstrings charitable cause.
I think that's a good example as well. Contextually, you can make up any number of examples and reasons why that deep fake might have been connected. Now, another component here is that if this deep fake is used or mined, it might trigger some other activity as a result of it. It just doesn't end with one deep fake, another deep fake might trigger another deep fake. So they might be linked in nature, which adds another level of complexity here, right? Let's take a quick peek back at the Morgan Freeman image. Would anyone have thought, can you point out some besides what I may have mentioned, or you could repeat some of the things that I've mentioned, but related to this image of Morgan Freeman, does anyone have any idea of characteristics that seem unreal in this picture?
In the picture, I did not, but in the video of him, when he was animated and speaking, it became very obvious that it was not a human. And the way the face moved, not all the muscles in the face moved smoothly as they would. And I would say perhaps his goatee is a little less defined and consistent with his hair. His hair also looks to be a little bit almost like faded or so.
Okay, so those are all good points. Why do you think someone might want to create an image and a message from someone like Morgan Freeman?
Maybe
Same
just for.
thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the same thing. He's well known, and I would say that in general, I doubt there's a lot of people out there that dislike Morgan Freeman. He seems to be one of those actors that has a huge following and seems to be a very benign character.
Right, so this is component of trust, right? So does anyone work on this call? Does anyone work for a company in a technology related role? You can just raise your hand. Or not. Oh, someone does. Scott, I can't see everyone's response, so I'll just take that there's one or more than, maybe there's a few. In the case of, I see there's definitely more than one. If you're in a technology related role, and maybe someone can answer for this for us or give us an example. Do you interface directly, meaning face-to-face in person with every request from a person within your organization?
Nope.
Or do you sometimes get audio video conversation?
No.
Is it possible that in that audio video conversation, you could be talking to someone that you never seen before?
That is possible. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. So is it possible you might not even know what the person looks like, and therefore it's even harder to detect if that individual on the other side of that audio video call is who they are and sound like that individual, right? That makes it very difficult.
Yeah.
So it's, these are some of the things that, from a incident management perspective, these are some of the skills that you could develop as part of the boot camp. I'm going to end there for a minute and ask if there's any questions, because thank you for your interactive help. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So knowing these things with AI, I've sat on a couple of other seminars where they've actually used AI to try to manipulate the deep fake to kind of try to make it more realistic. Have you guys seen some of that? Where, like, say with the eyes in a picture, they generate the eyes. So some of the earlier products, when you did the generation of pictures of individuals that aren't real, the eyes are always kind of were the tell. They started using AI to generate so that the eyes were a little shifted off, so that way the deep fake was harder to detect. Are you starting to see now with the advancement of AI, it's beginning to evolve more where they're using the AI to evolve the deep fake so it's harder and harder to detect?
Well, I would say my answer to that is it's totally possible, and it's really based on cost, and it's really in regards to cybersecurity. It would be based on, if an attacker is going after a company, how far are they willing to invest to get to embedded enough to where they need to get to their destination, right? So clearly it's possible technology wise to keep modifying and improving the deep fake technology, but it's really based on, there's a cost to it, right? So it really is based on how far the attacker wants to and can go based on their resources.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it as not so much an attack, as I just feel like in our upcoming elections, I feel that AI is going to play a big portion of it coming through. And that's just kind of a concern with where I work at and stuff. So that was just kind of where my question was kind of going to. So thank you.
Yeah, and Robert, let me chime in there. One of the things that we talk a lot about at CyberWarrior is how AI and cybersecurity is going to interact in an increasingly stark manner in the future. How does cybersecurity professionals utilize AI, and what they need? But the reverse is also true. What in AI do we need to be looking out for beyond, just deep fakes? It's any number of things. I see and I hear about people who actually do respond to an email or a video or a phone call that is a deep fake from their boss, because they're frankly a little nervous about not responding the minute they get an email from or a phone call from their boss, because they're always afraid for their job, or the boss is a little unhinged sometime or whatever, and so without thinking they're worried about their job and they hit go. So how AI and cybersecurity interact is something that's going to be is an increasing focus of ours over the coming months, because it's the world we live in, and we all better get used to it, either from a professional perspective or just a personal interest perspective.
I completely agree. Thank you.
Yeah, Scott.
Let me add one point.
Okay. Yeah.
So what we teach in the boot camp, or what you can learn in the boot camp, is all those foundational skills that would prepare you to better understand what is happening in related to these particular incidents, so you could be better protected for your organization and yourself. Is there another question? Sorry.
My question is, do you guys, since this is sort of how, what you guys do, are you seeing this as sort of like the possibility for like an arms race? If you were think back old technologies, and then maybe not old, but it's been around for a long time. Radar trackers came out, and then radar detectors came out to track the radar trackers, and then they got better radar trackers that couldn't be detected, and then they got radar detectors that could detect it. And so you end up having this like leapfrog arms race between policemen and, let's say, people who would speed. And as it relates to this, if you're seeing AI generating deep fakes, and then perhaps people who are trying to detect them are using AI to detect the deep fakes, you see what I'm getting at? It almost seems like there's a possibility for just like a leapfrog arms race.
I'm happy to answer that question, Jonathan.
Sure. Yeah.
So I do agree with you. It sort of relates to what police can do with radars. It's a really good example. I think you'll find a lot of that same arms race in cybersecurity in general. And we do give other talks on things like ransomware, right? But it really comes down to, from a cybersecurity perspective, learning about how to prepare for these situations, right? So if there is an arms race going on, and a good example in comparison to this AI example is ransomware, is if your company is not well prepared with backups and processes to ensure you could use those backups to recover from this arms race activity, then it's sort of the same regards that if you have a radar in your car and you're speeding, but it happens to go, was plugged into your lighter and happened to be knocked out, you weren't making sure it was working, then you're not going to be prepared. And what we teach in the boot camp is all the foundational components to make sure that you can be prepared to manage these situations, right? Whether that be incident response related, business continuity related, or anything from that manner. Hopefully that answers your question.
And I'm gonna take it a step further, that arms race is actually a pretty good analogy, I think. It's the job of cyber criminals to stay one step in front of the good guys. It is their job. It's the job of the good guys to maximize the prevention techniques, and that's where David's foundational skills come in, because everything roots from those foundational skills. But then secondly, how do you maximize your efficiency to respond when an attack is successful? Everyone is going to be attacked, and everyone is going to be successfully attacked. If you haven't been already, you either don't know it or it's just a matter of time. There isn't a CISO out there who thinks, I'm going to spend my 30-year career and I'm never going to get successfully attacked. Well, they're just not that delusional. So it is an arms race. So the skills that you evolve allow you to leapfrog more quickly than someone without those foundational skills, because it is let's not assume that the people who are successful cyber criminals are unintelligent. They are very smart, and they know what you're thinking, feeling, and how you're acting on a regular basis, and they know where the vulnerabilities are. They know how many people are so afraid of their boss that they're going to click on an email from that boss, or they're going to respond to a phone call from that boss saying, hey, wire $500,000 here tomorrow, and not ask a question, because they know those statistics. So it is an arms race, and that's why we need more people to get involved in cybersecurity. The stat that I heard actually just today, it was an updated stat. It's on ransomware, but there's a lot of ransomware that's associated with deepfakes, as David can attest to. The ransomware number so far in 2023 through June is around $480 to $500 million. That means that they're successful. That means these people know what they're doing. So anyone who has it in them to say, you know what, that ticks me off a little bit, I'm gonna get involved with this, because we shouldn't have $500,000 in ransomware successful attacks in just 6 months. So those foundational skills are important, because they know that you're going to figure out what they're doing eventually. So they're going to be on to the next thing, to beat you at the game, to beat you to the punch even more quickly.
Well, I would just take it one step further, maybe just to clarify, is that we have on the top of this list right here, this slide, phishing, right, and other scams, which Jonathan mentioned, reputation smearing, social engineering, automated disinformation attacks, identity theft, financial fraud. These issues are not going away. What deepfakes are doing is giving whoever is trying to sort of cause this activity another tool, and maybe that tool is being developed in an arms race, if you want to describe it that way, but it's just giving it another tool to make these activities mentioned here much more effective, right? Because if you can, as mentioned, if you can update the deepfake eye movement to look more real, then the ability to perform these types of attacks, which are, which you'll learn as part of cybersecurity, just becomes much more effective. Then the arms race has to be, how do you detect that better? How do you prepare for that better? How do you respond to that better? And that's what that's what we're teaching as part of the boot camp. And that's why there's such a prevalent concern about the number of individuals and the size of the industry for cybersecurity professionals, right? They need many more cybersecurity professionals to not just deal with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 types of attacks, but all the ways that they can be carried out, which is increasing.
Other thoughts, questions? I like the dialogue. The dialogue is great. That's what we push for and strive for in our program on a regular basis. If you've got questions, let's hear them. Just comments, thoughts, insights. Does anybody have any questions about our program? I will say that we do have a boot camp. If any of this is of interest to you, we do have a boot camp that is starting up on the Monday, the 24th is our next class. So if you can put your world in order and want to learn this stuff and can take 28 weeks, I would do it. The jobs that are available are not going away at all. They are only increasing as a testament to the $500 million in ransomware alone in 6 months' time. So we do have a program that starts on the 24th. It is 5:30 to 9:30 East Coast time, Monday through Thursday. Friday is a highly encouraged, though not mandatory, but highly encouraged review day for people who need to bone up on skills A, B, or C. Want to spend a little bit of time with their peers on study groups, working with TAs, etc. It is starting soon. It is a lot of work. You have homework, you have live classroom instruction, but by the end of it, you will be prepared to be a cybersecurity professional, sort of security analyst level 1 type positions, which is the starting off point in terms of where you then find your passion. So you know what direction you want to take in cybersecurity after you learn those foundational skills that David has referenced a few times. So that is an opportunity. You know, I would welcome any questions people have about how we do our boot camp program as well. It is for anyone in the industry, whether you have experience in IT or whether you do not have experience in IT. Of course, if you have a little bit of experience, it's always helpful. But if you have any questions on that, please let me know.
I just had one question. As far as with the boot camp, would I be able, because I've seen that you guys do like projects and assignments that although assignments and everything geared towards like a profile that's acceptable to an employer, if I was to try to jump into cybersecurity and everything?
Brandon, that's a great question. We are very lab and capstone driven. By that, I mean, yeah, you teach academic, you teach theoretical because you kind of have to at some level, but we are all about practical experience. How do I apply the skills I'm learning? How do I go into an interview with a hiring manager and say, this is what I can do for you on day one. These are the skills that I bring to the table, even if you've never been paid to perform those skills. So we probably will have you do north of 75 labs over the course of a 28-week period of time. We will have you do 5 capstone projects over the course of that 28-week period of time. The last capstone project being a presentation to all CyberWarrior bootcamp students in total. So you're presenting to, you know, anywhere from 50 to 75 students on that last capstone project at the end of the program. But treat it as your, you know, back in my day, if you were an art student, you carried around a portfolio with you that you'd bring to every interview, and it was this big black, you know, cumbersome thing that you would show your drawings, your paintings, your graphic art, whatever it is. In the same way, the labs, and we ask you and we mandate for you to take a screenshot of successfully completed labs. And we make sure that we are memorializing all 5 of the capstone projects. So it is designed for you to then go share that information with employers, to answer your question. Because we know it's about practical experience. It is not about the theoretical. It's why we always say, yeah, certifications are great. They're important and all. They're important from an HR perspective a lot more than they're important from a hiring manager perspective. The hiring manager wants to know how you're going to apply those skills. The hiring manager says, good for you, you passed Security Plus, or you passed Pen Test Plus, or whatever. But they're going to want to say, okay, now how would you apply that skill in a real world scenario? And that's what the labs and capstones can do for you, to say, this is how I apply it. And no, I didn't get paid for it, but this is how I apply for it, because the skill is the skill is the skill.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. That is awesome. Thank you.